In March 2013, a 30-year-old mother of two from Peterborough, England, went on a 2-week killing spree that cost 3 men their lives and very nearly cost another 2 theirs. What went wrong with Joanna Christine Dennehy to make her savagely stab 3 men to death and to viciously stab in broad daylight another 2 whose lives were only spared by rapid medical assistance? In case you don't know, I'm Gina, and this is Dark and Dishonest. Dennehy was born in 1982 in St Albans, Hertfordshire, England. Her mother worked in a supermarket while her father was a security guard. Her mother noticed early on her daughter's highly sensitive nature. At school, meanwhile, Dennehy was someone who, with her notably considerate behaviour, was often trusted with responsibility by her teachers. A school netball star, for a while Dennehy had private tuition on top of her schooling for extra stimulation. Dennehy's parents, who paid for their daughter's supplementary tuition, were keen for her to fulfil her dream of becoming a lawyer. Dennehy was close to her parents and to her sister. She was a model school pupil. She had a happy and loving upbringing, and experts in psychology and criminology even say how rare this sort of background is in the case of psychopathic behaviour.
She, as evidenced by reports from her sister and her parents, was a very happy, engaged young girl, at least till the age of 13.
When, at 17, Dennehy discovered that she was pregnant, having no desire whatsoever to be a mother, she was furious. Dennehy was pregnant to local man John Trina, who was 5 years her senior. Dennehy had run off with him a year before, at 16, and the two were now living in Cambridgeshire. After the age of 15, Joanna Dennehy, devoted sister, loving daughter and model pupil, would never be the same again.
She skips school, hangs out with a group of older boys.
She's abusing drugs, she's abusing alcohol, she's sexually active, and by the time she's 16, she's actually moved out of the house and is living with an older man.
Every attempt that Dennehy's parents made to get their daughter away from the drink and the drugs that she had since started abusing, and to keep her away from the gang of older boys that she had started mixing with and sleeping with, regrettably failed. I can't say whether or not Dennehy's drug addiction gave rise to the mental health problems that she developed during this period.
There's clear indications that Joanna Dennehy had a drink and drug problem, but there's also clear indications that she had other kinds of mental illness and was known to the local psychiatric service from a relatively young age. So it's quite clear that there was a combination of drink and drugs and to a degree mental illness that was influencing her behaviour.
I can say though that Dennehy's alcoholism led her to ask to be paid for the casual farming work that she did in booze, and that her drinking terrified her boyfriend.
In one job, she was paid in whiskey.
Yes, she was. Whiskey, vodka, stolen goods, and not bringing home the money for what was needed for the kids, the house.
John Trina was a battered boyfriend, his girlfriend's drinking having been the cause.
Alcohol makes Joanna extremely violent. So we know that even in this first relationship, whenever she's under the influence of drugs or alcohol, she becomes very aggressive. She'll beat him up. She'll become very violent towards him.
If you plan to start a YouTube channel of your own, then Creator Fast Track from Gillian Perkins will teach you everything you need to know about keywords, titles, thumbnails, the first 30 seconds of your video and the video idea itself, as well as absolutely everything else you need to know in order to win at YouTube. The information is of course gathered in one place and sequenced in a logical and meaningful way, rather than being scattered across a million YouTube videos with no sequencing of any kind. There's a link to further information in the description box below. Support your girl Gina and click, click, click. Having apparently gone without alcohol and drugs and self-harming during her pregnancy.
She didn't drink, no, she didn't smoke, she didn't do anything. She had a clean pregnancy.
On returning home after giving birth, Dennehy went straight back to booze, substance abuse and slicing her stomach. During sex, Dennehy would slash her stomach and her arms with delight. She also liked holding a knife to her throat and testing it on her skin. When John Trina left his girlfriend, he was easily able to get full custody of their 2 children. Alcoholic, addicted to drugs and wholly dysfunctional, Dennehy then went from bedsit to bedsit, from odd job to odd job, and, on turning to sex work to support herself, from punter to punter. Following her arrest for some form of violent behaviour, Dennehy was officially diagnosed with a psychotic condition. Dennehy has an antisocial personality disorder and an obsessive-compulsive disorder.
Almost exactly a year before this moment, a psychiatrist had diagnosed Dennehy as having an antisocial personality disorder and an obsessive-compulsive disorder.
Around the time that Lucas Slabosewski, aged 31, met Dennehy, he'd been planning to return to Poland, his home country, for good in the near future. Lucas was clearly excited by the highly suggestive text messages that Dennehy had sent him ahead of their next date. Lucas told his friends that he was going to see the woman that he thought was his new girlfriend. Dennehy stored Lukasz's body in a dumpster. She had killed, she had liked it, and she was going to do it again and again. On being stabbed in the heart by Dennehy, Lucas had died almost instantly. The lawyer who represented Gary Stretch in Dennehy's murder trial described him as a nodding dog. Gary Stretch's real name is Gary Richards. Standing over 7 foot tall, Richards' time as a devoted father and husband appears to have come to an end when he turned to petty crime. His creation of his nickname, Stretch, was a deflection to the taunting over his height that he'd suffered since his teens. After committing a burglary, Richards very soon found himself under arrest. He had failed to wear gloves or to then wipe his fingerprints from the scene of the crime. The scene of the crime was an office. Richards' loot comprised of a single bar of chocolate. The interest that Dennehy, a fellow drifter, had showed in Richards clearly filled the obvious and significant gap in Richards' self-confidence. Richards was one of the 2 men that Dennehy would enlist to help her dispose of the bodies of her victims. They were Dennehy's removal men, if you will. Richards helped Dennehy put Lukasz's body in the dumpster. Dennehy was, I believe, fully aware that she would be caught for Lukasz's murder, and that was all part of the fun. Dennehy wanted to be known.
She was focused on the notoriety that her actions would give her in time. So there's that element of wanting to be seen as bad and scary and really dangerous, which is part of her character.
Perhaps John Chapman, a 56-year-old Falklands veteran, had, on one occasion, glanced into the bathroom of the house that he shared with Dennehy while Dennehy was in the bath. Or perhaps he hadn't. But Dennehy already disliked the man sharing the house that she had moved into after murdering Lukasz. And, like Lukasz, Chapman couldn't fight back when Dennehy stabbed him once in the neck and then 5 times in the chest. Chapman had been nodding off on the sofa in the lounge, intoxicated with alcohol, as usual, and with drugs. Dennehy murdered Chapman with the same knife with which she murdered Lukasz. On seeing Chapman's body in the lounge, Leslie Layton got his phone out and took a picture of it.
A trophy to show his friends, perhaps, or a big moment to look back on when he was bored. Layton had become yet another man in Dennehy's thrall.
A housemate to Dennehy and Chapman, who lived a life of drink and drugs, Layton joined forces with Dennehy and Richards to take the bodies of Chapman and Lukasz and dump them in a countryside ditch. Dennehy is on a roll and she's on a high. She can't wait to kill again, and only hours later, she does. Dennehy killed partly for bravado, say some. She wanted Richard and Layton to see her, or rather to keep seeing her, as fearless and ruthless.
Dennehy's cohorts, the men in her life, become an audience. Whether they know it or not, they become people she wants to impress. She is killed, they show her respect. She must kill again to keep that respect.
Dennehy reaches sexual orgasm when she slashes herself while masturbating. Inflicting pain on herself and on others, say some, is a sexual turn-on to her. Dennehy is bisexual. She appears able to seduce any man that she wants and to kill any man that she wants. She has since affirmed that she would never kill a woman, especially not any with children. Did Dennehy target men in quest of a gender role reversal in which the man becomes the physically weaker sex while the woman is the stronger one?
There are too many examples of men who kill women because they hate them, a hatred caused by repressed sexuality. There are very few cases where women become serial killers for the same reason, but that may be what has happened in the case of Joanna Dennehy.
The owner of a lettings agency and having several properties of his own, Kevin Lee let Dennehy stay in one of his homes rent-free. He soon went off his new girlfriend, however, who had, of course, initially hidden her aggressive and intimidating side from him.
He told a friend that she was a cross between a character in the film Kill Bill and the Terminator. Violent, aggressive, armed. She was a frightening person to be around.
Their relationship no less persists, and on the 29th of March 2013, Lee tells his friends, "Joanna says she's going to dress me up as a woman and rape me." Lee is actually highly aroused, I believe, as he leaves work to go and meet Joanna to perform that role play. Every time that they had done that role play in the past, they had finished by having sex. Dennehy knew when she texted Lee that he wouldn't resist coming to her for the role play. Lee didn't know, however, that every time that they had enacted that role play, Dennehy had considered stabbing him through the heart. While Richards subsequently cleans Lee's blood away, and while Leighton goes and gets rid of Lee's car as instructed by Dennehy, Dennehy dresses Lee's body in a black sequin dress and then performs various acts on the body. On dumping Lee's body in another countryside ditch, Dennehy, Richards and Lee enjoyed the sick joke of leaving Lee's bottom exposed. The fun for Dennehy seemed to be as much in humiliating Lee as in stabbing him to death, as she, of course, regrettably had done. The two other men that Dennehy stabbed that same day, but whose lives were thankfully saved by a swift medical response, were out walking their dogs. Dennehy had attacked John Rogers and Robin Beriza in broad daylight after dumping the bodies of Lucas and Chapman and before luring her boyfriend to her bedsit and killing him. At the police station after her arrest, Dennehy acted as if her very arrest was just one big joke.
One mark for attempted murder and murder. Attempted murder and murder, something. So going down for Sunday Rose.
For reasons of which I am unaware, and possibly contradicting Dennehy's avowed plan never to kill a woman, in prison, where Dennehy will be spending the rest of her life, Dennehy attacked fellow serial killer Rosemary West. If this video has gripped you, I recommend you to watch this one next. I'll meet you there.